It is June 4, 2025. The guided missile destroyer USS Higgins is transiting the Taiwan Strait as part of a freedom of navigation patrol. The ship maintains a steady speed of 20 knots, following international waters. The crew is on alert, but the morning is calm. At 10:12 a.m., the ship's SPY-1 radar detects fast-moving contacts lifting from a Chinese coastal airbase. The tracks indicate twin-engine fighters climbing quickly. Analysts identify them as J-16 multi-role fighters, capable of both long-range and close-in combat. Their heading shows they are moving directly toward the American destroyer. The Combat Information Center updates the air picture. 2 J-16s climb through 10,000 feet, then level and accelerate. Within minutes, 2 more fighters join them, forming a 4-ship element. Their configuration suggests an intercept. The captain orders the crew to battle stations. All air defense systems are brought to readiness. SM-2 long-range missiles are prepared for possible engagement, while ESSM, CRAM, and CIWS are set for layered defense if the fighters move aggressively. At 10:24, the lead pair of J-16s drop altitude sharply, descending from 12,000 feet to under 1,000 feet in less than 2 minutes. Their radar emissions spike as they begin painting the destroyer. On the bridge, sailors can see the jets approaching low over the horizon. The first fighter makes a high-speed pass directly across the bow at less than 500 feet. Its afterburners thunder as it crosses only 200 yards ahead of the ship. The second jet follows, executing a similar pass off the starboard beam, close enough for crew on deck to feel the shock wave of its jet wash. The crew logs the maneuvers and keeps defensive systems tracking. The rules of engagement remain clear. Weapons may only be used in self-defense if directly threatened by an attack. At 10:32, the second element of J-16s arrives. These fighters immediately take up aggressive positions. One trails the destroyer from just 2 miles astern, holding steady at 500 feet. Its targeting pod remains fixed on the ship's superstructure, recording high-resolution imagery. Another fighter moves into a bracketing maneuver 5 miles to port. Together, they create a trap. If the destroyer engages one, the other has a free attack angle. This is a Cold War-era intimidation tactic now being used in real time. The crew monitors fuel states and flight profiles. The Chinese fighters are heavily armed with PL-15 radar-guided missiles and PL-10 short-range missiles, all designed for air combat. But their behavior shows the message. If these had been anti-ship missiles instead, the destroyer would already be in danger. At 10:40, surface search radar detects a large warship approaching from the north. Identification confirms a Type 052D Chinese destroyer, one of the PLA Navy's most advanced ships. Its fire control radar activates intermittently, briefly locking onto the USS Higgins before going silent again. The American crew interprets this as another signal. The harassment is coordinated. Air and surface forces are combining pressure on the destroyer in an attempt to force it to change course. The captain maintains steady transit. Orders are to continue through the strait peacefully, document everything, and avoid escalation unless fired upon. At 10:55, sonar operators detect a possible submarine contact. The narrowband trace indicates a diesel-electric submarine operating on batteries. The contact appears to be closing the destroyer's path from the east. The ship deploys its towed array sonar for better detection and launches a helicopter equipped with sonobuoys. The helicopter quickly confirms the presence of a Yuan-class submarine. It is maneuvering to a firing position. The helicopter drops a lightweight torpedo as a warning action. The submarine reacts by diving sharply and deploying decoys. The contact breaks off and withdraws. The timing indicates coordination with the air and surface forces. By 11:05, the situation escalates further. The Chinese destroyer moves to within 8 miles and maintains fire control radar lock. The 4 J-16s regroup and execute alternating close passes at less than 300 feet over the American ship. Each maneuver is closer and riskier than the last. At 11:09, one J-16 crosses directly 150 feet above the ship's bridge. The jet wash rattles windows, knocks unsecured items to the deck, and causes minor injuries to 2 sailors from flying debris. This is logged immediately as unsafe and hostile behavior. The USS Higgins now faces simultaneous threats: a Chinese destroyer closing in, aggressive fighters overhead, and the possibility of a submarine nearby. Defensive systems remain locked and missile cells are armed, but weapons hold until a hostile act is confirmed. At 11:15, new instructions arrive from higher command. The USS Higgins is cleared to carry out a limited strike if the Chinese destroyer continues to hold fire control radar lock. Moments later, the Chinese destroyer's fire control radar locks again. The signal is steady, focused directly on the Higgins. In the Combat Information Center, the system confirms it is the Type 346A phased array radar, the exact system that guides the ship's long-range YJ-18 anti-ship missiles. This is no longer a warning. It is targeting data. The captain orders a strike. 2 launch cells on the forward deck open, and a pair of RIM 174 Standard Missile 6 interceptors fire almost simultaneously. Each missile weighs over 3,000 pounds and leaves the ship in a plume of fire, climbing rapidly before turning toward the target. Their onboard active radar homing systems immediately lock onto the emissions from the Chinese destroyer's radar. The time from launch to impact is less than 90 seconds. The first SM-6 slams directly into the destroyer's forward radar face, destroying dozens of transmit-receive modules in a single blast. The second impacts milliseconds later, finishing the job by shredding the remaining panels and wiring. The entire radar mast is left smoking, twisted and silent. The Chinese destroyer still floats, its weapons still in their launchers, but without fire control radar it cannot guide missiles against a moving target. In combat terms, it has been blinded. The reaction is immediate. The J-16 fighters that had been making close passes scatter in 4 directions. 2 climb to over 20,000 feet and turn back toward the mainland. The other 2 accelerate to high speed at sea level, running for the cover of Chinese coastal radar. None continue their aggressive maneuvers. At the same time, sonar operators report the submarine contact breaking off. The Yuan-class submarine had been holding position at firing depth, but after the strike it dives and shifts away, its acoustic trace fading as it withdraws. The message is clear: it no longer wants to risk being tracked or forced to surface by American anti-submarine assets. Within minutes, the skies clear. The Chinese destroyer lingers but no longer poses a threat. Its missile batteries useless without radar guidance. The Chinese did not launch the harassment randomly. It was a calculated move, meant to scare the United States out of regular patrols in the Taiwan Strait. By surrounding the American destroyer with fighters, a surface ship, and even a submarine, Beijing wanted to prove it could make U.S. operations dangerous and costly. But it didn't work. The American destroyer stayed on course, and when it disabled the Chinese ship's radar, the intimidation collapsed. Instead of leaving, the U.S. decided to send even more power into the region. 2 days later, the USS Ronald Reagan sailed in with its carrier strike group. On the flight deck were over 70 aircraft. Squadrons of FA-18E and FA-18F Super Hornets lined the deck, ready for air combat and strike missions. EA-18G Growlers were prepared to jam enemy radars and communications. E-2D Hawkeyes sat high on the deck with their large radar domes, controlling the airspace for hundreds of miles. MH-60R Seahawk helicopters were armed for anti-submarine warfare, while MH-60S Seahawks handled search and rescue, cargo lifts, and patrols. The carrier didn't come alone. A Ticonderoga-class cruiser and 2 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers sailed in escort, each carrying the Aegis combat system and dozens of long-range missiles. Beneath the waves, a Los Angeles-class fast attack submarine shadowed the group, unseen but always ready to strike. What started as a Chinese warning ended up backfiring. Instead of scaring off one destroyer, their move brought in an entire American carrier group with overwhelming firepower. The United States made its message clear. It was not leaving. It was reinforcing.